following podcast is an exclusive presentation of Project Entertainment Network.
Hey folks, Brian Keene here. You know, summer's over. We're entering the fall and then the winter. Halloween's coming up, Thanksgiving, and then of course the holiday shopping season. Speaking of the holiday shopping season, let me tell you about subculturecorsets.com. They've got everything you need for everyone on your list for this holiday season. Clothing, accessories, gifts, books, you name it, they've got it. They sponsor every show on the Project Entertainment Network, including this one. So please give them your business. Visit subculturecorsets.com.
Thank you for coming to the Project Entertainment Network store. Please place your order. A good choice. A t-shirt for the horror show with Brian Keene. Amanda Method coffee mug. There's more. A Necrocast on hoodie. That's sharp. But why on earth would you want Bizong leggings? Wait. Are you Mr. Frank? The Project Entertainment Network store. Stacked with goodies from all your favorite podcasts. T-shirts, hoodies, mugs and more. www.projectentertainmentnetwork.com.
There shall come a podcast like no other. Defenders Dialogue with Brian Keene and Christopher Golden. Marvel Comics' original superhero non-team convenes once again. The Incredible Hulk, the Savage Submariner, the Master of the Mystic Arts, Doctor Strange, and a dynamic supporting cast of Marvel superheroes battle against evil as the Defenders. Without further ado, true believers, here's your hosts, Brian Keene and Christopher Golden. Excelsior!
And welcome back once again, true believers, to Defenders Dialogue. I'm Brian Keene.
You are a very excitable Brian Keene.
I'm very loud at the beginning of the show, Chris, because every week engineer Tom Clark plays very loud music over top of us.
Well, I am Christopher Golden, Brian. And I say Excelsior to Tom Brown's loud music. Brian, I'm super excited for a number of reasons. The first is that I've remembered to remove the phone at my desk and put it in the hallway, so we won't hear it ringing, at least without it being muffled and distant during this episode. And more importantly, I'm super excited for you, sir, because today features the return of Devil Slayer.
That's right, the return of Devil Slayer. And I too am super excited about your phone. That is, of course, a callback to last week's episode if you didn't hear it. If you did hear last week's episode, before we start this week's show, we have a message from writer J.M. DeMatteis himself, who wants us to know something very important. But before we get to that, Chris, you know why else I'm super excited?
I do know, Brian. I know you're super excited because we have a sponsor this week.
That's right. We have a sponsor. This author, he did not want to sponsor Three Guys with Beards. He did not want to sponsor the horror show with Brian Keene. He wanted to sponsor Defenders Dialogue. And that is, of course, author David Bryan, his new novel, The Strange Case at Misty Ridge, which is a supernatural cosmic horror novel partially inspired by the works of William Hope Hodgson. It tells the story of Jack Keswick, who survived a tragedy that claimed many lives. His injuries have forced him into semi-retirement, and now he spends his days investigating reports of paranormal activity. When a young woman turns up at his door claiming her home is infested with spirits, his investigations lead to a haunted cottage, the restless dead, and the revelation of a force that will forever change his perception of reality. That is The Strange Case at Misty Ridge by David Bryan. It's available right now in paperback. The ebook is exclusive on Amazon Kindle. And right now, Defenders Dialogue listeners, you can read it for free if you have a Kindle Unlimited subscription. So that's David Bryan, The Strange Case at Misty Ridge, and we thank him for sponsoring this week's show.
Yeah, I think that sounds really good, actually.
I do too. I'm going to order a copy myself. So that's one copy sold.
There you go.
Also, you know, if you're a regular listener, you know that we are currently, we have reached J.M. DeMatteis' seminal run on the Defenders. And it turns out that he is, in fact, a listener to the show. And he reached out to me last week. He says, and I quote, regarding the terrible lyrics of Asmodeus Jones. If you listen to last week's show, you'll remember that Asmodeus Jones was the heavy metal singer who one of the members of the Six-Fingered Hand had possessed. So he says, regarding the terrible lyrics of Asmodeus Jones, I was a musician and rock music journalist before I ever wrote comics. And I put out an album of spiritual rock and roll in 1997. And in fact, he did. And that album is available to listen to for free on YouTube.
But does it have the songs he wrote for Asmodeus Jones? That's what I want to know.
I don't know. I did listen to it after he sent this to me because, you know, I'm a big J.M. DeMatteis fan. It's good stuff. I enjoy it. The name of the album is How Many Lifetimes. He was billed as John Mark DeMatteis. And like I said, the whole thing is available on YouTube. I don't know if I played a sample of a track right now, I don't know how that would sound going through my laptop, through Skype, into your computer, and then engineered with Tommy Clark, who will probably play loud heavy metal over top of it. But yeah, you know, I encourage everybody to go to YouTube and check that out. I also want to apologize to everybody. Yes, Chris managed to take his phone out of the room, but as you heard a moment ago, I forgot to mute mine. And also, Mary San Giovanni just woke up and is getting Cheerios and petting cats. So if you hear a lot of chaos in the background,
this is the charm. This is the charm of our show, Brian.
Yeah. Hello, new listeners. Please stick with us. It gets better than this.
No, it doesn't. It really doesn't. Let me ask you a really important question, though. Is there more to J.M. DeMatteis' message? Because thus far, he hasn't said that his Asmodeus Jones songs were his best work.
Well, he said he gave me the link to the album, and there's I don't know how much of this he wants shared on the air, but I will say he said I can't tell you how much I appreciate the kind words about that Defenders run. It was so early in my career, and all I can see are the flaws in the work. That you guys appreciate those stories means the world to me. And I told him. I said, man, it is such a treat to reread these again. You know, I talked about how Dungeon Master, he's 10 years old. He listens to you and I do this in the background. And then he reads them for himself later on. And he keeps saying that he wishes comics were still like this. In fact, he told me that last week. And I pointed out to him that J.M. DeMatteis, the guy we're talking about right now, writes Justice League 3000 and Scooby-Doo Apocalypse, both of which Dungeon Master reads and enjoys.
There you go.
And he said, well, they should have him writing Defenders again, Dad, along with Mr. Keith, of course, a reference to our dear friend Keith Giffen. So
there you go.
You know, I like that my 10-year-old.
I feel like at this point,
uncle basis with Giffen.
This is,
you know?
Yeah, this is going to date me, Brian, but. For our younger listeners, they won't know what the hell I'm talking about. But I feel like at this point, Casey Kasem should play a song for a long distance, a shout out, whatever. I don't remember what you used to call them.
I don't know. I never listened to Casey Kasem. I was a Howard Stern guy.
I listened to Howard Stern as well. But in any case, in fact, they should have had a team up. But all right, can you imagine that? Imagine that team up.
Oh, wow.
By the way, for those of you who are unfamiliar, if you have no idea who Casey Kasem is, but you've seen old Scooby-Doo cartoons, he was the voice of Shaggy.
That's right, he was. He was.
But in any case, moving on to the subject of this podcast. About that.
I wondered how the hell did he veer into Casey Kasem, American Top 40? That's right, he was the voice of Shaggy.
Yeah, he was the voice of Shaggy. But in addition to that, it was, you were reading that note, that very kind note from J.M. DeMatteis, and it reminded me of listening to Casey Kasem because he would always say, I have a long-distance dedication from blah, blah, blah. And then he would read this very sweet note from someone who wanted Casey Kasem to dedicate a song to someone. And since we're talking about J.M. DeMatteis' music, is that Mary singing in the background?
No, that's me singing some Lionel Richie.
Oh. All right. In any case, folks, this podcast is actually about the Marvel comic series, The Defenders.
That's right. And this week's episode is about issues 97 through 99.
If we get to 99 after this, but anyway.
Yeah. The next part of the Six-Fingered Hand saga. We open with issue 97, where the Defenders, who are now composed of Doctor Strange, Gargoyle, Son of Satan, Nighthawk, Valkyrie, and Hellcat, are still in Detroit. They are at a rented home that had belonged to the aforementioned Asmodeus Jones. And what they're trying to do, Doctor Strange is meditating, and he's trying to track Fushima, the demon of the hand that had in fact possessed Asmodeus Jones. And Son of Satan is being a dick right away.
Yeah, it's so funny. So 2 points I want to make. Firstly, points to DeMatteis for calling this issue "Slouching Toward Bethlehem" and quoting Yeats at the beginning. And
Absolutely.
What rough beast, its hour come round at last, slouches toward Bethlehem to be born. I love the seriousness of that quote, because it's clear how much fun he was having with this. And I also want to point out that this page just jumped out at me because it reminded me how fast during his run the rotation of Defenders changes. It's changing like more than once in an issue half the time.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he uses everybody. The Defenders, as we've said since issue 1, it has a rotating cast of members. But I think DeMatteis brings back just about every single one of them at some point. And does different matchups that we haven't seen before.
In this arc in particular, yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, we've got DeMatteis, and once again, for this run, Don Perlin and Joe Sinnott are the artists unless we tell you otherwise, basically. So go ahead, Brian.
So he has no luck tracking Fushima, and he points out that last issue, Hellcat, Patsy Walker, her behavior at the fate of Asmodeus Jones, she broke into laughter. It was very bizarre. And Doctor Strange proposes that the demon of the hand, Avarice, who had possessed Patsy Walker, that some of Avarice may be left behind in her. What he wants to do is he wants to use the eye of Agamotto to figure out what they can learn of the hand. And Hellcat responds, "You'll learn nothing. I don't want that disgusting light of yours prying around inside my head. Keep away from me, you pig," which pretty much confirms Doctor Strange's suspicions that she is still, in fact, possessed by Avarice. Patsy comes back to the forefront. She allows him to do it. And we get a real nice recap of everything so far. The different demons of the hand, the battle with Pushyant and Fushima and Avarice. Avarice begins speaking through Patsy and actually manages to cast Doctor Strange out with a telepathic blast and almost knocks him cold. And we see the Son of Satan caring for Patsy in the aftermath of this attack. Mm-hmm. Before they can get too romantic, who steps out of thin air, Chris?
Eric Simon Payne, Brian. And I know your heart is going pitter-pat.
Motherfucking Devil Slayer. Pitter-pat indeed.
Then we get a little recap of Defenders number 60, the last time that Devil Slayer teamed up with the Defenders. We find out that Devil Slayer and Damon Hellstrom are familiar with one another from their reputations. And I do like this little whispered conversation between Gargoyle and Doctor Strange, where Isaac says, "Doctor Strange, how many of these super people do you Defenders know?" And Doctor Strange just says, "A number of them."
That's right. And then we get a nice thing here from DeMatteis. Now, remember, Devil Slayer, of course, created by David Anthony Kraft. I can't remember what episode number of the podcast we did it on, but we did a whole history of Devil Slayer, mm-hmm. How he actually started out at another company,
yep.
and they brought him over to Marvel. But DeMatteis fleshes out his origin here much, much better. And this is why his iteration of Devil Slayer remains my favorite. We find out that Payne has a wife named Corey. They were separated first by choice, then they reconciled. But if if longtime listeners remember the cult of Vera Gemini, when Devil Slayer first joined the Defenders, he was worried the cult of Vera Gemini would harm her, so they separated again. When they finally got back together, it didn't work. They'd been apart. So she bought a plane ticket for Europe and left him far behind. And he's sharing this very sad story. And then Son of Satan interrupts and says, "This is all very fascinating, Payne, but does this chronicle of your personal failures have a point?"
Well, and again, as you said last episode, Damon Hellstrom is the resident dick now for the Defenders.
Yeah, now that Namor is temporarily out of the picture,
exactly.
Hellstrom taking over.
Exactly. So basically, Corey Payne has sent Eric, a.k.a. Devil Slayer, a message from where she is in, I believe, South America, talking about how she has met the Messiah, Brian.
She's in Israel.
In Israel, I'm sorry. She's in Israel. She has met the actual Messiah. She has been blessed by his healing touch. And obviously, Devil Slayer is dubious about this claim. He wants their help. And Damon Hellstrom's, Doctor Strange says, "I am sure that once you allow the psychosensitive metal," I have to quote that, Brian, "of your trident."
If you didn't, I was going to call you on it for not quoting.
Of your trident, to tune into the vibrations of that missive. So basically, once again, Damon Hellstrom's abilities are very malleable. And he uses the psychosensitive metal of his trident to tune into the vibrations of the letter that Devil Slayer got from his wife to figure out its origins. And so they travel to the Middle East.
Now, one very important thing here.
Yep.
Again, this is foreshadowing. Of course, Devil Slayer, he has the Shadow Cloak, which, remember, Hellcat has a copy of the Shadow Cloak. Okay, so Devil Slayer takes Nighthawk and Hellcat, and they step into his Shadow Cloak, and they're teleported to Israel. Doctor Strange teleports the rest of the Defenders using a teleportation spell. Now, you will notice, since J.M. DeMatteis has come on the book, if you go back through and look at each issue, Doctor Strange is relying more and more on that teleportation spell. In fact, he uses it multiple times per issue. This is being done on purpose, dear reader. It's not a shortcut. We will find out later in the show, in fact, that it's very important. But yes, we then get an interlude, Chris. Now, were you a fan of the Man-Thing?
We talked about this multiple times, and here's what I would say. The Man-Thing was a character I always liked, but when I tried to read the book that was solo Man-Thing stories, I couldn't get into it. So I feel like I need to give it another shot. Maybe after we've done the Champions, we'll hit up Man-Thing.
I think that's a good idea. We get a 3-panel interlude in Florida, in the Everglades in Florida.
Well, I think the thing to lay out for readers here, the most important thing about this interlude, is not even the presence of Man-Thing, but that Man-Thing inhabits a swamp in Florida that is the nexus of all realities.
Exactly. All of time and space meet up in this swamp in Florida, which explains John Urbansick and Jeff Vandermeer.
Yes, and yeah, exactly. And then there is a tear in the fabric of reality, sort of hovering in the air, a hole hovering in the air above the swamp. And this is what Mike Mignola would refer to as the patented Christopher Golden portal. Because Mike likes to tease me because I use that a lot in my Peter Octavian series.
Right.
In any case, we get back to Israel. They're in the desert, and the Defenders have appeared in civilian garb, thanks to the magic of Doctor Strange, or it might be coming from the nether trident of Damon Hellstrom.
And for once, Gargoyle isn't wearing the Flasher outfit. He has a very fashionable Hawaiian shirt.
Yeah. What I love about this Gargoyle appearing as a human, thanks to Doctor Strange's magic, is he looks like every bad American tourist. He's this short, old, sort of chubby dude in a bad Hawaiian shirt.
Yes. We then see a bunch of people in a pool of water. They're being baptized by somebody who Don Perlin has drawn to look exactly like a modern-day Jesus Christ. And we then get a reminder that because it's daylight here in Israel, we get a reminder that Nighthawk is paralyzed
during the day
between sunrise and sundown. So Nighthawk immediately collapses. Valkyrie picks him up, and while they're debating what to do with Kyle, someone shouts, "I can see!" And we find out that this is not just a baptism. This Messiah figure is healing people in the water. This person says they've been blind for 30 years, but now they can see.
Yep. This guy's name is David, and interestingly, they obviously assume that the person who's just claiming that he's been healed is a fake, that he's part of the show, like to make people believe in David. So they bring Nighthawk over with Kyle Richmond's assent to basically prove that this guy is faking.
Right.
Corey, Devil Slayer's wife, is so excited to see her husband, thinking that he's come around to her way of thinking, but he immediately and very bluntly says, "No, that's not the case. We're here to expose this dude as a fraud." But David takes Kyle Richmond in his arms, Brian.
That's right.
And submerges him as if in baptism. Then we have, while that submergence is happening, we have a story that Corey is telling of David's history. We don't really have to go through much of David's history here, except to say that he was sort of trying to find his place in a world, holding up "Make Love, Not War" signs, thinking he wasn't going to be able to work it out, teaching handicapped children, and then he met an angel in the desert.
Right. I mean, this is a good man, a man who tried to do good in the world, and then an angel appears to him and tells him that he is now filled with divine power and sends him back to begin his mission of raising the world up from the state it's been in for far too long. And sure enough, that's exactly what he does for Kyle Richmond, because Nighthawk can suddenly walk again in the daylight. The defenders are stunned, and indeed Valkyrie says, "Stephen, we cannot deny the evidence of our own eyes. This David has done what even you could not."
Yep. And I actually love this moment.
Yeah, I mean, all of them are stunned. Every one of them, except the son of Satan. When Devil Slayer says, "I must ponder this," son of Satan says, "You must what?" He's having none of it.
This is why every group of friends needs at least one metalhead, right, Brian?
That's right. I feel I am the Damon Hellstrom of our circle of friends.
That is probably correct.
Yeah, son of Satan goes charging towards the Messiah. "I can brook no more of this subterfuge. I can bear no more of this deceit." He accuses David, this good man, this genuinely good man doing good things, of belonging with the devils of the pit.
And then I love this. Hellcat. No, it's not. Is it Hellcat? I think, yeah, who whispers.
Hellcat.
That's what I like about Damon, Val. He's so diplomatic. So this is clearly Mary whispering something about you. In any case, that's what I love about Brian. He's so diplomatic. Anyway, we get the confrontation and conversation. Kyle is defending David against Damon Hellstrom. Isaac, a.k.a. Gargoyle, interrupts, and he's trying to be very rational as always. So I'm clearly Gargoyle, saying you're accepting David so easily seems as stupid as Hellstrom's wanting to fry him on the spot. So David basically says, "Look, we can solve all this. We don't have to have this argument. I'm just going to expose the truth. I'm gonna pray and expose the truth in the area." But the truth he exposes, Brian, is what?
That Isaac and Damon are the son of Satan and Gargoyle. What he's shocked to find standing before him a demon and a bare-chested guy with a pentagram burned on his chest
and another trident.
Yeah.
So.
And then he calls down an army of archangels from the sky, at which point the other defenders dispense with their disguises.
And then we have a battle between the Defenders and a bunch of supposed archangels.
Yeah, now, the Defenders, they fought Zemnu the Titan, they fought Yandroth, they fought the Headmen, Nebulon, the Serpent Society, but now they're fighting angels, Chris.
And Nighthawk hangs back because he's just had his paralysis cured, he thinks, and he hangs back. He doesn't know what to do. He wants to get involved and help his friends, but he feels like, he shouldn't do that. But at a certain point, David actually stops the battle. He says, enough, even if you are evil incarnate, I cannot stand by and watch you die. And he tries to disperse the angels, to send them away, but they won't go. They keep attacking the Defenders, which allows Doctor Strange to take a moment to cast a spell to reveal that the angels are, in fact, demons.
That's right.
Once again, we get, demons. Like, what the hell are these things?
Yep.
They look like a 1970s toy line to me, and I say that in a good way. They're just they're really fucked up.
Yes. The only thing I can compare them to during Steve Bissett's wonderful turn on Swamp Thing with Alan Moore, the little mini demons that he would draw around Arcane when Arcane was in hell.
Yep.
They share a certain kinship of form with the demons that Perlin has drawn here.
Yep.
Understand, I'm not saying Bissett copied it. I'm just saying a very similar style in that whatever you can imagine, it's there on the page.
Yep.
Well, David himself is shocked. We get the sense that this man genuinely believed, he was serving God. But then David vanishes. I mean, his body is still there, but his consciousness vanishes. And we find out that just like Dracula and Asmodeus Jones and Hellcat, David is possessed by another demon of the six-figure
But unlike
hand.
the others, David did not know. He He genuinely thought that he'd met angels and he was the new Messiah. And so it's more tragic because he had no idea that this demon was possessing him and influencing all of his actions.
And this demon is Hippocry, another demon of the hand.
Yeah, and I want to point out, by the way, that it's not lost on us that these demons are named after sort of poor traits of humanity. This Hippocry clearly is hypocrisy. Avarice is avarice.
Right.
We're all in there. So that's not lost on us. But it takes Corey, who reaches out to David and argues with him and tries to get him to overcome the possession. And initially he doesn't manage to do that. But as he's about to kill her husband, Eric Simon Payne, a.k.a. Devil Slayer.
Yeah, because he knocks Devil Slayer back, and one of Devil Slayer's swords is sort of sticking up in the air.
Yep. And so David, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, David momentarily overcomes the possession of the demon. He says, no, I won't let you destroy everything that matters. I won't let you crush the dreams. And David hurls himself on Devil Slayer's outstretched sword, and basically dies, and the demon is driven out of him, and the other demons are sent packing, basically. So this is a thing that it's sort of stunning, right? I mean,
it is. It is, and we get another one of those beautiful, beautiful endings from DeMatteis. I want to read the dialogue here to people. Son of Satan says, "This all seems such a waste, an utter waste." And Nighthawk says, "He gave his life to save us, Hellstrom. I wouldn't call that a waste." Corey says, "Neither would I, Nighthawk." And Devil Slayer, seeing his wife kneeling by David's body, weeping, perhaps this explains why they're still separated. He says, "You still don't see the foolishness, the danger of blindly following such men?" And she says, "All I see, dear husband, is a gentle man who gave me a reason to go on, a man who only meant to help." And Devil Slayer says, "Oh yes, he meant well, and the road to hell is paved with such good intentions." And she counters with, "Maybe if we had more dreamers, Eric, the road wouldn't lead to hell at all."
Yeah. Yeah, good stuff. That's good stuff.
Great stuff.
And I think, this is you go back and you look at this stuff and it's, it really works. And again, I want to point out too that what's great about this arc is this is part of an overall storyline, but every issue is complete.
Exactly.
All right, so jumping quickly into Defenders 98, I will say that although it does have Man-Thing on the cover, this is one of my least favorite Defenders covers because it's so busy and wonky and ugly. It's just ugly.
It's a very busy cover.
Yeah.
Penned by Marshall. Not a name that I recognize.
Yeah, I don't know. Is it Rick Marshall? I don't know.
Maybe it just says Marshall in the corner. I'm not sure who the artist was.
Interesting. Yeah, but in any case, I do not like the cover. It's not. It just doesn't. And the way that they did anyway. Enough of that.
So yeah, we're back in New York. The Sanctum Sanctorum. Clea and Wong are meditating together.
Let me interrupt for 1 second and say again, real quick, that this is the one frustrating thing about the series at this time. Actually, at all time, it's so infrequent that we get Clea in action with them. And I know she's his disciple, and that's the thing. She's a student. So that's part of the reason. But, we have her as the student and Wong as the manservant. And so she's back there studying and meditating.
You know what, Chris?
Yeah.
Spoiler warning, you're going to get your wish.
Yeah, no, and I know we do. But it is this, this thing where we don't get enough of her. In any case.
Anyway, the phone rings, and Wong, he gets up, he answers the phone, and as he does, the Defenders materialize. Again, Doctor Strange has used the spell of teleportation. Very important. They arrive, and Wong tells him a most important personage is on the line. And Doctor Strange takes the phone and says, Captain America, to what do I owe the pleasure of this call? Turns out that Tony Stark and Captain America and the Beast, who those of you who are only familiar with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, you'll know the Beast as Hank McCoy from the X-Men movies.
There you go.
And Wonder Man, who I don't think has been used anywhere in the movies yet.
Simon Williams. Although apparently there was a rumor that Nathan Fillion had filmed a cameo as Wonder Man for the last Guardians of the Galaxy movie, but I'm not sure about that. He would be perfect as Wonder Man.
The cameo was confirmed. It's not. We don't know if he's going to be Simon Williams or not. But
all right, let me jump in here for 1 second and say, for those of you, again, like people who are not familiar with the 70s and 80s in the Marvel Comics universe, so the Beast did begin in the X-Men. He wasn't blue and furry at that point. Then he became blue and furry in his own sort of spin-off spotlight title that ran for. He was in, what was that series? Was it Creatures on the Loose or something?
Amazing Adventures, I think.
Yeah, one of those. Somebody will correct us. For about 3 issues, that's when he got the blue fur. Until when he went back in the X-Men, he had blue fur. But we will see the Beast become over time, and most people don't realize this. He was a huge character in the X-Men. He was a member of the Avengers for a very long time, folks, in this era, and we will see him become really important in the Defenders over time. But I want to just say this, Brian. The relationship between the Beast and Wonder Man in the Avengers of this era, of the early 80s, is one of my favorite things in the history of comics.
I agree. And, DeMatteis wrote some of those issues of Avengers, if I remember correctly. And the relationship between those two characters has always reminded me of what DeMatteis and Giffen did later with Booster Gold and Blue Beetle on Justice League. I almost wonder if it mirrors their own friendship, meaning DeMatteis and Giffen.
Yeah,
that might be a question for both of them.
Yeah,
I agree.
Which would mean that one of them is really smart and likes to have his mind taken off the troubles of the world, and the other one is a big goof. But they can tell if we have DeMatteis on the show, we can ask him which one of them is smart and which one of them is a goof. So
well, Mary swears. Now, Mary has met and spoke with Keith many times. She swears that it's just like talking to Rocket Raccoon from the movies. And I can't argue with her.
All right. In any case, so we have this cameo.
The Avengers, now, keep in mind, the Avengers now know about the Defenders. Go back to the Defender for a Day saga. They are flying over the town of Citrusville, Florida. Except the problem is Citrusville, Florida isn't there anymore. Captain America tells Doctor Strange, you see, yesterday we would have been flying over the little town of Citrusville, but today all that remains of said town is a steaming crater, miles deep, in the shape of a six-fingered hand. And we get a fantastic splash page. This giant smoking six-fingered hand has been burned into the earth.
Exactly.
And the town is gone.
Also, I want to point out that Citrusville, Florida, folks, is on the edge of the Everglades area, the swamp where the Man-Thing resides. So not far from the nexus of all realities. And I also want to point out that they make a point of having Doctor Strange drop in that he'd warned the Fantastic Four and the Avengers to keep an eye out for anything referring to the six-fingered hand, and thus Captain America's call.
Right. So the Defenders are getting ready to spring into action, but before they can, Nighthawk basically tells them, because he's lying in bed paralyzed, he says, you kids have fun. As of now, I'm quitting the Defenders.
Yep. And I like this line, face it, people, I'm of no use to you. As long as I turn vegetable at the first light of day, you might as well have kept Dracula around. And I thought, they should have kept Dracula.
There's a great little panel of interplay here between Valkyrie and Kyle. Because keep in mind, Valkyrie came to Earth. She had nobody other than Jack Norris, who she didn't remember. And she tells him, you've been my, you, Hulk, Patsy, Steven, you've become my earthly family. And he says, and I will always be there for that family, Valkyrie, but not as Nighthawk. Yeah. He's gonna spend more time as Kyle Richmond and fight evil as Kyle Richmond. So he's gonna do good deeds as Kyle.
Yep. So
we then get an interlude. Do you want to tell folks about the interlude?
Yeah, the interlude is interesting. It takes place in Montclair, New Jersey.
Woohoo!
Yeah, where's Mary when you need her to go woohoo in the background? And these three kids, including a kid named Cliffy, which I assume is the character from Cheers before he grows up. Anyway, they're looking at the remains of the of Hellcat's residence, the Walker house, and Cliffy has laid his hands on Hellcat's cloak.
Now, keep in mind,
shadow cloak.
Yeah, it has the exact same properties as Devil Slayer's cloak.
So Cliffy throws on the cloak. He says, "Check me out on Mandrake, Alakazam." And as he says this, the cloak wraps around him and he vanishes. And as his two friends rush in, a demon starts to... Now, a demon that looks suspiciously like a Sleestack from Land of the Lost climbs out of the cloak. That's the end of that interlude.
That's right. Then we go southward, where the Defenders appear in Florida. They meet up with the Avengers. There's a great line from Tony Stark. They, once again, Doctor Strange uses the teleportation spell. They appear out of thin air, and Tony Stark says, "It appears the Defenders have arrived in their own distinctive style."
Exactly, as usual.
Yeah.
And I also like the reference here, by the way, to the Beast says when they're going off. Now, there goes an unusual bunch, especially the little lady in the yellow tights. This is not the Beast being a dirty man. This is him referring to their time together in the Avengers, because Hellcat was with the Avengers prior to the Defenders. So exactly. She knows them all pretty well.
That's some context that might be lost on millennial age readers.
Exactly. Exactly. If they haven't read that.
But that little lady in the yellow tights is behaving unusually again. Devil Slayer says, this area reeks of evil. There's something wrong here. And Hellcat leans against a tree, posing very seductively, and says, "Oh, I don't know about that. It feels kind of nice to me. I'm sure you'd agree, Damon."
I like your sexy voice, Brian.
You like it?
I think you should do that all the time now.
All right, I'll do sexy Hellcat.
No, please don't.
Do David Hellstrom. Go.
No. That's just no. We're not doing that.
She, Damon's like, why are you flirting with me, woman? There's a giant 6-fingered hand crater and a town's missing, and she keeps flirting with him, and then she lightly claws his face, drawing blood with her fingernails, and summons a little bit of his dark soul, which we talked about last episode.
And then I like this. Well, since you did Patsy before, you do that line, just as I always thought, Damon. There you go.
Just as I always thought, Damon. You're all bark and no bite. Satan's little boy is a whip.
Oh.
Oh, my dear, why is this happening to me again?
I don't know if we just lost half of the listeners or gained more from
Victor
that.
Victor LaValle's out there right now saying, "My God, what am I doing with my time?"
He's right now thinking he's not going to tell anybody. He's going to deny listening to this show now.
Hi, Victor. This is Patsy Walker.
All right, enough about that nonsense.
Guess who the defenders get confronted by?
All right, so then the best part happens, Brian. We discover that Hellcat tells him, well, wait, so all right, we're backing up here. She says, "I thought Avarish was gone." And he says, "I thought so too, but when my journey through your mind should have cast out the final remnants of Avarish's influence, and I'm certain it did," he thinks. This is a thought balloon. "But how can I tell Hellcat that I perceived an even greater darkness at work within her, a darkness somehow connected to the hand, yet beyond it?" So this is the first inkling that we've had, the first hint that we've had, that the 6-fingered hand may not be the be-all and end-all baddie in this arc.
That's right. That's right.
All right.
But they are the baddie right now because just like Dracula and Hellcat and Asmodeus Jones and David, someone else has been possessed by a demon of the hand. A muck-encrusted mockery of a man.
The man thing.
And Chris, this isn't just the man thing. This is a giant-sized man thing.
Exactly. Which is, of course, a reference, Brian, to the annual issues called Giant-Sized Man Thing. Actually,
that's right.
I think they were quarterly, actually.
That's right. Mary's looking at both of us right now like we just made that up. But
yes,
no
Mary.
Giant-sized man thing. Google it.
Yes, Virginia. There is a giant-sized man thing. Perhaps the greatest and most unfortunately titled comic of all time.
That's right. One of my first comics, Giant-Sized Man Thing #4, which also featured Gorko the Man Frog versus Howard the Duck.
I will point out, by the way, that it's possible that whoever came up with the title Giant-Sized Man Thing did not know what they were doing, because I can tell you from personal knowledge that when Tom Snagosky worked on the Bone universe with Jeff Smith, and they introduced a character called Big Johnson Bone, Jeff had no idea that it didn't occur to him that Big Johnson Bone might be a funny name. In any case,
Speaking of giant-sized man-things, Man-Thing confronts the Defenders, and he is Godzilla-sized.
Yes.
Because he has been possessed by Unthink, Demon of the Hand.
There you go. So, and because the Man-Thing is made of muck, basically, the Defender's powers don't really have much effect on him. Nope. Even at one point, Gargoyle flies at him to attack him, and he goes right through the Man-Thing, smashes into a tree, and is knocked unconscious briefly.
Yep.
With a loud clunk.
Yeah, Man-Thing is basically beating the shit out of the Defenders. Everybody except Hellcat, who stands off to one side. She doesn't join the battle. She's just watching emotionlessly, heeding a strange, seductive inner call.
She must be hearing your sexy voice. In any case, the battle continues. Doctor Strange realizes they're not going to win. He sends his astral form inside the Man-Thing.
That's right, inside its consciousness. Because we should very quickly explain the Man-Thing is not just a monster made out of swamp mud. It was once a human being, a scientist named Ted Sallis, who was trying to remake the formula that turned Captain America into Captain America.
If this seems to you to be similar to the Swamp Thing origin, you are not wrong.
That's right, but that's another show.
Yes. Inside the consciousness of Man-Thing, Doctor Strange's astral form encounters the actual Unthink, who's pretty cool looking, actually, Brian.
Very cool looking.
He looks like something out of Sinbad.
Yeah. But there's somebody else inside that consciousness, and that is the consciousness of Ted Sallis, whose human body became, of course, the Man-Thing. And it helps Doctor Strange defeat Unthink. Doctor Strange, after it's cast out Unthink, Doctor Strange says, I couldn't help you before, but let's leave your consciousness in charge of this body, and together between science and sorcery, we can find a cure. And Ted Sallis is terrified of that. He says, no, we might fail. I couldn't bear it. Please send me back down into darkness where I can at least know the peace of oblivion. And Doctor Strange does just that.
Yeah, a tragic moment, which is the classic stuff of this era for sure. Yep. In any case, then Man-Thing shambles off, because you can only use the word shamble in this instance. And then Doctor Strange explains, about Ted Sallis and all of that stuff. And then he says, okay, we have the gap is beginning to close. They want to close it up. I'm sorry. This is the gap into the nexus of all realities.
Right. But they can follow it directly to the dimension where the six-figured hand reside.
Exactly. Which is where the entire town of Citrusville has been sucked in, Brian.
Right. We then get one of my favorite splash pages from this series. I don't even know how to describe it, Chris. They're walking through alternate dimensions, and we just see little glimpses. We see a dimension where dogs are domesticated, or dogs are the dominant life form, and humans are their domesticated pets.
Yep.
We see a dimension where a barbarian is fighting a giant. Just all kinds of weird stuff.
I don't know if that couple that are dressed in Victorian garb are supposed to be bulldogs or hippos. I can't tell from the art, but and folks, I'm not kidding. I'm not making that up. That's what we're looking at here. Then there's some kind of space exploration scene with a spaceship and a satellite and a like Death Star or something.
And in the midst of all this is a giant disembodied six-finger hand with its index finger upraised, beckoning the defenders to follow it.
Which reminds me of Yellow Submarine.
It does a little bit, yes.
Yeah, or a Monty Python, really, is what it reminds me of.
Yeah, so they follow this this Terry Gilliam inspired hand, and it leads them into a dimension of darkness and fire, a fetid stench, and rivers of bile.
Rivers of bile.
To a horror that shakes even the son of Satan's soul. And most of all, it leads to madness. And there before him on another splash page, we see all the demons of the six-fingered hand assembled before them. And that's not all, Chris.
Well, we meet their leader, Maya, and the chairman of their little group, and Maya has captured the Hulk, the Submariner, Clea, and the Silver Surfer.
That's right, true believers.
And then says, let the party begin. And you know what, Brian? We have babbled a lot this episode, and I think rather than go overtime, maybe we should cut it short today.
I think that's a good idea. And then next episode,
we'll do 99 and 100.
Yeah, the final conflict and literally hell on earth.
And that means next episode.
Now, our millennial listeners, perhaps they came of age during Civil War or Secret Invasion or Fear Itself or any of the other myriad Marvel crossovers that
happen every day, basically.
But kids, you haven't seen shit until you've read Defenders, Hell on Earth, Defenders issue 100, where Satan literally conquers the planet and only the Defenders can save it.
Well, there you go. So, spoilers. Yes, the Defenders save the Marvel Universe from Satan. Now, that's a movie I would like to see.
Exactly. You know what else? You know what else I would like to see?
What's that?
The strange case that there's me stepping on the ad copy. That's why we don't get more ads on this show. The Strange Case at Misty Ridge by David Bryan, a supernatural cosmic mystery partially inspired by the works of William Hope Hodgson. That is available right now in paperback. The ebook is also available exclusively on Kindle. If you have Kindle Unlimited, you can read it right now for free. That is The Strange Case at Misty Ridge by David Bryan. We thank him so much for sponsoring this week's show.
We do. I agree. And, more importantly, I thank him for being a fan of the Defenders. Not of Defenders dialogue, but of the Defenders. Because
hell yeah.
I was thinking the other day, before we go, about how, as we go forward, because, by the way, next episode will be about 2/3 of the way through our reread of the Defenders. And I was thinking about why we picked the Defenders, aside from it being your favorite book. It's because it's so fucking weird. And I want to make sure that as we go forward, we're doing the weird stuff.
I agree. I think, if we only do 1 or 2 issues at a time, it's important to focus on that weird stuff.
There you go. Well, we'll probably do more than that, but yes, I agree.
I agree. But like this episode, we only got through 2 issues, but
that's all right.
That's okay,
Yeah.
You know what else is okay?
What's that?
Your other podcast, Three Guys with Beards, and my other podcast, The Horror Show with Brian Keene. Both of those available, of course, wherever you listen to Defenders Dialogue. Also, the Necrocasticon, which is the podcast of our engineer, Tommy Clark, who makes us sound good and loves to play loud music over top of us.
All right, Brian. Well, you know what? Excelsior, true believers.
Excelsior indeed, true believers. We'll see you next week, folks, for the final conflict.
Do you love comic books and consider yourself a die-hard fan? Then you need to listen to Parlapod. We have news, reviews, and interviews with your favorite pros, all while bringing some serious laughs. New episodes drop every Wednesday in time for New Comic Book Day. Parlapod is available on the Project Entertainment Network, all major podcast outlets, and parlapod.com. Tune in and fuel your fandom with Parlapod.
My Favorite Story, a podcast author anthology featuring short fiction from the hosts of the Project Entertainment Network shows.
Three Guys with Beards, Jim Moore, Jonathan Maybury, and Chris Golden.
Tom Clark from Necrocast on
Brian Keene of The Horror Show. Chuck Buda and Armand Rosamilia of The Mando Method.
Mary San Giovanni of Cosmic Shenanigans.
Jay Wilburn from Matters of Faith.
John Urban sick of ink stains.
Bizung's Mr. Frank.
Available on Kindle and in paperback and through the Project Entertainment Network store.
www.projectentertainmentnetwork.com.
This has been an exclusive presentation of the Project Entertainment Network.